Welcome back, Ronin Renegades. It is a beautiful week. Icelander has reached Living Legend, and FaB is running free. This is your daily FaB gameplay, and today's game will be played against Viserai. For anyone who is new to the channel, welcome to the Resistance. What we do here is review replays of games that I've played on the Talishar client days or weeks ago, after enough time has passed that I am more objectively able to review the quality of my play. I will walk through turn cycles as if I were taking them now and compare that to what I did at the time of recording to either learn from my mistakes or reinforce good play patterns. The reason to do this is to tighten and optimize our play in the future, take down paper events like Road to Nationals and Pro Quests, and walk away with that shiny, shiny cardboard. Without further ado, let's look at our sideboard and our game plan. Today's game features my Switchblade list. If you would like to check this list out on FaB or try it for yourself on Talishar, the deck link is available in the video description below. While you're down there, if you haven't already done so, please consider subscribing to my channel. It is the best way to support me and to make sure you see daily FaB gameplay in your video feed 5 days a week. I'm showing you this game because it's been a while since I put a Viserai game up on my channel, and I also believe that it is a pretty even matchup. We obviously have Warmonger's Diplomacy, which does a lot of work against Runeblade and against Viserai in particular, but it is only 3 cards in our deck, and when we don't see it, Viserai has a lot of potential to just blow us up. Additionally, with Icelander leaving the classic constructed meta, Viserai is set to become even more prevalent than he is now, as Icelander really was holding him back. So it's good to get our reps into Viserai now and prepare for when he is more popular after Icelander leaves this Friday. We have lost the die roll, and our Viserai opponent is choosing to go first, which is interesting because had we won the die roll, we would have chosen for Viserai to go first. So I'm not sure what this Viserai knows that we don't. It is possible that this Viserai is more combo-based, is more interested in making rune chants than the cash-in Crown of Dominion Viserai, and you will see as this game plays out that this Viserai is not running a Crown of Dominion, so maybe that is the takeaway from our Viserai choosing to go first. What does that mean for us? Not really much of anything. It isn't going to affect how we sideboard for this matchup, and with our equipment, we are not going to change a thing. We want to be on a Kodachi Mask Momentum game plan into Viserai, as we want to tear through his armor, then start taking cards from hand on blocks. Viserai does very well with 3 cards in hand or 5 cards in hand. Fewer than 3, not so good. 4, there's an extraneous card in there that ends up getting stuck in Viserai's arsenal. So if we can force our Viserai to block from hand, and especially if we can force him to go below 3 cards, we are really hampering the power of his turns. As far as our chest piece, we are going to leave our Flamescale Furnace as it does a bit of blocking in this matchup. And despite Viserai having arcane damage, we don't want to bring our Spell Void or our Arcane Barrier. Generally, with Runeblade, if you are pitching to Arcane Barrier, you are losing the game. And because Viserai has a good split of physical and arcane damage, if we want to mitigate life loss on Viserai's turn, we can just block. So we are going to keep our Shuko and our Snapdragon Scalers. Moving into the 60 cards in our deck, the only change that we are making is cutting our Stab Wounds and bringing in our Warmonger's Diplomacies. Warmonger's is very good in this matchup, as the most powerful turns that Viserai can construct are based off of a combination of non-attack actions and attack actions, and Viserai in particular, between him and Vincent, is even more susceptible to Warmonger's Diplomacy, because if he cannot play non-attack actions on his turn, he almost has no hero power. It is very difficult for Viserai to create rune chants without playing non-attack actions. Our game plan in this matchup is to race. We are pretty confident that we can outpace Viserai's damage by playing efficient hands and getting big Art of War turns. The way we lose this matchup is by getting blown up, either through a big damage turn or slow incremental arcane damage. So we want to block with our armor sooner than we would normally. We're going to do some aggressive blocking with armor to make sure that we don't have armor value left if we lose to arcane damage. The last thing we want is to leave life on the table because we couldn't stop that arcane damage. Because we're racing, we generally aren't blocking. The only thing we do want to block is Mavrian Skies, and especially Mavrian Skies Red. That tacks 3 unblockable damage onto any of Viserai's attacks, but because it comes at the end of the attack, it's even easier to block. If Viserai does something like Mavrian Skies into Shrill of Skull form, we are happy to block 7 damage if it means preventing 10 overall. And aside from that, we're just playing cleanly and efficiently, so we can jump into the game now and see what that looks like. Our Phoenix Flame goes to discard. We see that we have an Art of War and a Warmonger's Diplomacy in hand, which is a great start. And Viserai plays Sonata Phantasmia, which is not a card I have expected to see in the CC format. It makes 2 rune chants, and Viserai passes the turn. With us having only 4 cards in hand, we could fire off this Art of War, but I would rather save it for a 5-card hand. And because we're racing Viserai, he doesn't prompt much blocking, so I feel okay leaving it in Arsenal. We are just going to play a clean little turn, leading with our red brand, Kodachi, Phoenix Flame, Kodachi, Warmongers. Depending on how Viserai does or doesn't block, we push a little damage. We likely get 1 point of armor from the either Iron Weave to block the Phoenix Flame and our Mask trigger. Then Warmongers hopefully doing a bit to disrupt Viserai's turn. Checking Viserai's weapon to see that it is Nebula Blade, not Reaping Blade. So we are correct to think that Viserai is doing a bit of rune chant combo nonsense, especially with that Sonata Phantasmia. Our Phoenix Flame gets blocked, our Kodachis and our brand with Cinderclaw don't, so we are just going to play our Warmonger's Diplomacy and arsenal our Art of War. Viserai chooses War, we also choose War, and we see what we draw on our next turn. Viserai coming in with a Rune Flash. Taking 2 points of arcane damage, we will take 4 points of physical damage from the Rune Flash. And Viserai follows that with a Spellblade Strike, generating more rune chants for him. We take a bit more damage. We are going to open with our Art of War, and we're going to banish our Ravenous Rabble, playing a little fast and loose. If we didn't draw a red Go Again attack, our Blaze Headlong might be a bit stranded, but we do. So we find ourselves in a situation where we could either play a second Art of War or play out the hand we have here. Kodachi, Ronin Renegade, Blaze Headlong has the potential to trigger Mask of Momentum. We'll lead with our Kodachi, we will play our Ronin Renegade, then play our Ancestral Empowerment. Hopefully Viserai does a bit of blocking, I'm not expecting it. We're just going to play the Ancestral Empowerment for value. If we could play it on Blaze Headlong, we would, but of course we can't. We're hoping that Viserai blocks this Ronin Renegade. I'm not surprised that he doesn't. We draw into a Rising Resentment, which is really nice for pushing a little extra damage this turn, as it is the third Draconic link we needed to activate FaB. Drawing into another Warmonger's Diplomacy is almost really cool. If we could play Warmonger's Diplomacy this turn, that would be incredible for shutting down whatever Viserai is doing over there. but because we are under the effects of our own Warmonger's Diplomacy, we cannot play this one. So it feels bad to end our turn with 2 cards in hand, but we are going to do so because the alternative is throwing this Warmongers away, and at the very least, we can pitch it to play our Art of War. And depending on what this hand looks like and whatever blocking Viserai may force us to do, we can just play another Warmonger's Diplomacy to get tempo back from this. This opening the turn with Maverian Skies, so we are incentivized to do some blocking here. This attack coming in for 4. I'm okay with giving my Flamescale Furnace and my Shuko to stop this. I don't really want to overblock from hand, and with this game rapidly coming to a close, I believe I am getting more value from Shuko on defense than I am on offense. Double Revel in Runeblood here is pretty nasty. We are going to take quite a bit of damage from these rune chants that of course we cannot stop. And finally, Nebula Blade coming for 4 with a rune chant on the tail end. We could block this for 4 using a 3 block from hand and our Flamescale Furnace. I am more interested in pushing damage here. Pitching a Soulbead Strike for Kadachi, then E-striking for 5 to draw a card and use our Snapdragon Scalers. Hopefully we draw a 0 or 1 cost go again attack. Then we can play our Warmonger's Diplomacy. We're just setting up for Art of War here. I don't really want to play it with this hand. I don't want to put myself in a spot where I need to use Snapdragon Scalers to have a functional turn when I also want to play Warmonger's Diplomacy. Here we can just draw a card. We luck into a Ravenous Rabble that we will use to attack. Then we will play our Warmonger's Diplomacy and sit on our Art of War for next turn. Of course, using Snapdragon Scalers here to get the necessary go again. You can see that we do fire off the Art of War. That is an interesting line. It gets the Mask of Momentum trigger. The unfortunate thing about this turn is what I had just been afraid of, where we needed to use our Snapdragon Scalers to have a functional turn, and now we can see that the cards that we've drawn leave us with something less than that. We'll attack with this Rising Resentment. We can pitch our second Warmonger's Diplomacy to FaB to pick up and play our Phoenix Flame, and based on how Viserai does or doesn't block, we can play out a Warmonger's Diplomacy or a Snatch. Viserai here choosing not to block makes me think that he can do some big damage with these 3 cards, and especially him giving equipment to block instead of a card from hand makes me think that Warmonger's Diplomacy is going to be more effective than Snatch. I don't love arsenaling a card without natural go again, but either one of these cards puts us in that position, so let's at least screw with Viserai's turn. He and I both choose War. We can see that he does just send an E-Strike for 7, that card in hand likely being something important. We're going to block with the Flamescale Furnace here, seeing as how we can't really get value out of it this turn. We would rather just preserve life so that we don't die to the odd rune chant. We can play out our entire hand here, leading with either Rising Resentment or Ravenous Rabble, then playing the other. We are going to sequence Bittering Thorns as late in our turn as we can. Hopefully Viserai will block either of our first 2 attacks. This Bittering Thorns will hit, and our arsenaled Snatch will come in for 5 rather than 4. But in either case, we are putting this in a position where he is likely going to need to block something this turn. And without any armor, This is an interesting line. I see what I'm going for, where I want this to block this Bittering Thorns. If he doesn't, this Rising Resentment is also a breakpoint. But I don't know if this is good enough. I would have rather played the Rising Resentment to bait one of these 2/3 blocks out of this. Then our Bittering Thorns comes in for 4. This perhaps unlikely to block it, not wanting to give one of these other 2 cards in hand, and our Snatch presents lethal. As it is, our Rising Resentment Snatch will push a lot of damage on Vis's remaining life total, but is ultimately not threatening to kill him. Vis does block, but the Snatch does hit, so we put Vis to 5, draw and arsenal a Salt the Wound, and draw into an incredible hand for playing Salt the Wound. Swarming Gloomveil here is just coming for 3. Unfortunately, we don't have a 3 block in hand for a clean 1-card block. We are going to give our Mask Momentum and our Roman Renegade. We want to keep our Brand with Cinderclaw to get our Phoenix Flame activation with our blue, and we want our Double Strike in order to put more damage and more hits onto Salt the Wound. This is going to be Death of Viserai by 1,000 cuts. Unfortunately, we do need to take this Nebula Blade damage, which is extremely dangerous. It puts us to 2 and gives Vis a Rune Chant, so we are very easily dead here. But if we block that Nebula Blade, I'm not confident in our ability to win the game. Here we are forcing Vis to do a lot of blocking, and any of the blocking he does is going to be extremely inefficient. This turn will put 5 links on the chain leading up to a big Salt the Wound, so Vis will need to block at least one of these attacks, giving us a whole card from hand, then likely needing to spend 2 more cards to block this Salt the Wound. Although we go way too low on life, very easily being dead to arcane damage, we are going to force Vis to block very inefficiently, then give us the entire rest of his hand to not be dead. Salt the Wound here coming in for 6, taking these last 2 cards from Vis to stop it, and in fact Vis does need to overblock. And we get to draw back up to 4. Vis only has 1 point of life left. It's very easy for us to do. This hand looked a bit confusing to me on first glance, but the sequencing is very simple. Ronin Renegade, Blaze Headlong, pitch Bittering Thorns to Phi to pick up and play our Phoenix Flame, then play Lava Burst for 5. We are presenting 2 breakpoints within this turn, as well as a Phoenix Flame to force a real card out of Vis on defense, and we pick up a very close win. This game easily could have gone the other way if Vis had just a bit more time. If one of those Art of War turns hadn't happened, then we very easily could have lost here. As it is, we do pick up a tight win. So I was excited to show this game because it's been a while since we saw a Viserai on this channel, and Viserai is still very much a threat. We resolved 2 Warmonger's Diplomacies and 2 Art of Wars and still almost lost that game. And there wasn't much we could have done to play it any tighter than we did. So as Icelander leaves and the meta really shakes itself up without the presence of ice to slow any of these decks down, things are going to change in a big way, and Viserai is poised to become a real threat once again, and we are going to need to learn how to deal with him. I hope this video helped you learn how to do just that. If it did, if you found it helpful, please head jab that like button for me. My comments are always open for any questions or feedback. I'll be back tomorrow with more daily FaB gameplay, and until then, take care.